It's the Security Weekly News, episode number 286. Welcome to the week of 2 April 2023. We've got ProtoCell Phones, KEV, Efile.com, 3CX, Western Digital, NATO, and more on this edition of the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
Did you know that Active Directory is exploited in 9 out of 10 cyber attacks? With access to Active Directory, attackers can gain control of your network. To keep attackers out, you need to find and fix Active Directory security gaps. Meet Purple Knight, a free security assessment tool that scans your environment for hundreds of vulnerabilities and helps you fix the problems. Ready to reduce your Active Directory attack surface? Download Purple Knight, the #1 Active Directory security vulnerability assessment tool. Visit securityweekly.com/Semperis, SEMPERIS, for more information.
Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
Oh, well, it's April, and as Lou always said, April showers are colder than a witch's instep or something like that, but he usually got those wrong, so I don't know. Well, according to this report, over 15 million with an M, public-facing services are susceptible to at least one of the vulnerabilities in the KEV. The KEV is the Known Exploitable Vulnerabilities Catalog that's produced by CISA, which I mispronounced, but I'm going to do it anyway, and that is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. Well, so they have currently on their list of, and these are active exploits, so this is stuff they have observed somebody is actually doing. So there are currently 896 vulnerabilities on this list, which is kind of disturbing in and of itself. But Resilion, I don't know how you say it, but Resilion did the research to identify the vulnerable systems. And I think they use Shodan because all their charts said Shodan on them. So, I mean, it's a pretty sad state of affairs, right? I mean, there's a list, and people know there's a list, and the list has stuff on it, and Shodan can show you if you're vulnerable, and these are being exploited, and they are vulnerable, so why didn't you fix that? I mean, I think we should start the arms of an angel song now. So it's like, we're vulnerable, we're so vulnerable, please save us in the arms of, you know that thing, the ASPCA thing, right? But seriously, 15 million of you have systems, outward-facing systems, that are vulnerable right now. The report said that 7 million of these systems were vulnerable to one of the 137 Microsoft Windows vulnerabilities that are in this list. Now, of the top 10 vulnerabilities in the list, over half of them were more than 5 years old. And, normally I would say, well, it's probably a machine sitting in a lab somewhere, but the reality is these are outward-facing services. That means people can see them. So, some of you are not patching the way you should. It's kind of like washing your hands. You need to patch, right? Because, really. But seriously, these are active vulnerabilities that people are currently searching for and exploiting. And they're long established, so there's lots of docs about them. There's proof of concepts about lots of them. And that means people are looking for your unpatched systems right now. So please, check, patch up, okay? Efile.com is an IRS-authorized e-filing service. Usually stories don't start with that. They're usually like, the IRS would never. But no, this is an actual authorized e-filing service that people in the United States use to file their tax returns on the 15th of April, which actually occurs on the 18th of April this year. But according to the IRS, the 15th of April, but the 18th is the next possible day. Apparently, Efile.com has been caught serving up something other than bad news to tax filers. It was serving up malware. So multiple people spotted and reported efile.com serving up a malicious JavaScript file called popper.js. And the popper code attempts to load JavaScript that's returned from info ameanew onlyog.online. I don't know how I can't say it, but who cares? But it basically could load whatever somebody puts in that directory. So if they load, anything in there from, I don't know, NotPetya to something brand new, or just a script that deletes your account or whatever, they can do that. Bleepy Computer said that the script was being loaded by almost every page of efile.com up until April 1st. So if you used efile.com before April 1st, you might want to, do a little checking. A Reddit threat on the threat post on the 17th of March implied that the efile.com website was hijacked, which turned out to be true. So when you went to it, there was an SSL page that said, this certificate's invalid, that usual one that says, and you then click proceed anyway. Well, there was an additional file called update.js, which was being served up by an AWS endpoint that was being used by efile.com that was serving up this particular page. That file, it threw up a false SSL error and then prompted users to download another file. So this is more of a phishing type attack, but that other file was the next stage payload of this whole operation. The binaries in the attacks all connected to 47.245.6.91, which is a Tokyo-based address. Not that means anything, but it appears to be hosted by Alibaba. And of course, all of that means, well, good luck. Malware Hunter team analyzed the binaries and found that they contained Windows botnets that were written in PHP. God. But there is a link in this article to a SANS analysis of this whole thing. So if you want to read the grim details of how all this worked and what all the files did and so forth, they're there. Apparently this has been corrected by efile.com. So as April 15th/18 starts to arrive, you might want to be a little bit careful. The 3CX supply chain attack that we talked about last week had further updates this week. Apparently, some of the victims that were targeted via the 3CX VoIP phone switching software had their systems backdoored with GoPuram, which is a known malware. In all those cases, the attackers were specifically targeting cryptocurrency companies. In the original attack, 3CX was compromised by Lazarus Group, which is well known as a North Korean threat, group, and they had been infecting companies with Trojanized versions of Windows and Mac OS desktop apps for 3CX. The attackers replaced two of the DLs that the 3CX desktop app used with malicious DLLs, a very common kind of approach. And that, of course, allowed the downloading of additional components when somebody ran the 3CX desktop app. GoPuram malware has been attributed to Lazarus Group by Kaspersky and others in the past, and Kaspersky said that it being there means they can attribute the 3CX campaign to Lazarus with medium to high confidence. 3CX has confirmed that the 3CX desktop app client was compromised one day after news of the attack surfaced on the 29th of March. The company is advising customers to uninstall the Electron desktop app from all Windows and Mac OS systems, and they did provide a link to an uninstall script in the article, although I would certainly take a long look at that script before I ran it. They have asked you to switch to the Progressive Web Application Web Client app. And so I don't actually know that because I haven't used this system in a long time. I did use it a long time ago, but I haven't used it in a while, so I don't know all the apps that go along with it. But if you are using 3CX, they're advising you to switch to this other app at this point. So you can check the article out. They got all the details there. After a breach, Western Digital has shut down several of their services. The breach was announced on Monday, the 2nd of April. The outage impacted services including MyCloud, MyCloud Home, MyCloud OS 5, SanDisk IBI, and SanDisk iExpand wireless charger, which are all services involved in backing things up via the property that this company owns. And so if you're not familiar with Western Digital, they own SanDisk, they own a lot, they make spinner hard drives, they make SSD hard drives, and so on. And a lot of times they're selling you backup products now that you can back up all your files online. And as you might guess, backup files online are huge targets because if people back up their system drives and all their data into these repositories, that has a lot of good stuff in it. So people are always after this, a la, your iPhone backups and so forth. The company announced that an unauthorized third party had gained access to a number of their systems. They didn't provide a lot of detail. Western Digital said that the company implemented incident response efforts, which was the shutdown, and they initiated an investigation, and they were working on restoring all the impacted services and infrastructure. But they have not released yet what all was accessed or how it was accessed at this time. So, if you're using any of those Western Digital products or your company uses that, you might want to be careful. NATO is looking for pen testing vendors to assess the security posture of its internet-facing components. You should look at the KEV list, too. In a notice posted by the United States Department of Commerce last week, NATO International Military Staff, and all these things have acronyms if you're interested, NATO International Military Staff is planning to launch an invitation for international competitive bidding on the project. The requirement will be to assess the cybersecurity posture of NATO assets that are exposed on the internet by using controlled pen tests. Contractors will need to have a base in the United States and be pre-approved for participation if you want to bid. If you are interested and you have all the proper approvals, which are all listed in this article with links to various things, if you're interested, the deadline for a bid, I think, is, I don't know if that's the bid deadline or that's just the, being listed deadline, but the deadline is the 25th of April. It will be a one-year contract with 2 one-year extension options on the contract. So could be lucrative if you have all those, if you've jumped through all those hoops already, or you want to jump through some hoops, you may be able to get eligible for this. Some U.S. researchers, it's a little switch. Usually we see this from Tel Aviv, from Ben Gurion, but this one was from the United States. They developed an attack called NUIT, which stands for Near Ultrasound Inaudible Trojan. And the attack exploits vulnerabilities in smart device microphones and voice assistants to allow silent remote access to smartphones and home devices. The team was at the University of Texas and the University of Colorado, and they found that Siri, Google Assistant, Cortana, and Alexa are all vulnerable to NUIT-type attacks. They did 2 specific attacks as part of their research. And the first one emitted a sound which exploits the smart speaker to attack the microphone and voice assistant on the same device. So they actually went after the speaker to emit a signal. The other attack they did emits the signal from one speaker to try and exploit a different device. So if you've got these things sitting near each other, the sounds are inaudible to humans. And as you well know, there are many, many sounds that humans can't hear, and there are others of us that are humans that can't hear all the sounds that other humans can hear because we spent too much time firing firearms without hearing protection and standing in front of Marshall amplifiers at full volume in nightclubs for many years. Now, this had been seen before, and I remember somebody else doing stuff like this, I think was Ben Gurion, but basically, the voice assistants have far better hearing than any of us. And so what they were doing is they modulate voice commands in frequencies that humans cannot hear. So if your pets suddenly jump up and run around the room, maybe this is what's causing it, or maybe your pets are just like my pets, and they jump up and run around the room for no reason whatsoever. The signals are embedded in an app like a video or an audio file, which they get you to play. So, and I mean, this was research, so they're not actually targeting people, but they were doing research. So they put it in a YouTube video or something. When you're playing the YouTube video and watching the cat dancing or whatever, this sound is playing in the background. So this is like all that stuff they got all worked up about on rock albums a long time ago. That there were secret messages hidden in rock and roll albums, and, everybody was going crazy thinking their kids were going to turn into, I don't know, cannibals or something. But when you play the video, then the signal plays alongside the video, and it can be heard by these devices. The researchers were able to control an iPhone's volume. So they actually, with targeting iPhone, they told Siri essentially to shut the volume down, and Siri then generated another response. So you didn't hear even Siri going, okay, I'll do that. You didn't hear anything. Now, in the case of Google, Cortana, and Alexa, they were unable to make the response inaudible. So you did hear that device respond, but you still may not pay any attention to it. The attacks were only able to be 77 milliseconds long on average because there was a reaction time of the device. So they start talking to it, they had to do this pretty quick. So the first attack they used basically instructed speak 6% to lower the volume. So they said lower your volume to 6% and then open the door. So they had like some kind of door lock attached to this. It was a pretty interesting, and then they also had secondary commands and whatever. It's a pretty interesting story. They are going to demonstrate this at the Usenix Security Symposium in August, and said the research would be published at the same time. So if you're interested in following up on that, well, Turnitin is a tool for helping teachers detect cheating. Many of us have used this before, and others. Basically, what it does is it searches all these submissions in a massive database, and it has other approaches as well to try to detect papers that may have been copied and or duplicated or whatever. Turnitin is already claiming they're going to release a tool to detect ChatGPT papers. Now, the detector they're going to release is supposed to catch AI-written papers that are being submitted by students. Now, usually my experience was you don't really need a fancy tool for this when, the cheater type people, when little Robert with his 1.9 GPA turns in something like on continued gravitational contraction in freshman astronomy, you kind of may ask yourself, is this a copied paper, and go search for it. And I've done that and found it. But your more sophisticated cheaters, which there are some, well, they can be sophisticated. So anyway, they were testing this, and a high school senior who got the highest possible grade on an essay about socialism, which was probably titled something like, "So you're on disability and use insurance, but you hate socialism." But Turnitin said the essay was written by ChatGPT, even though the student says no. And this was a test, so we know they're not lying. Because, when you ask people who are cheating if they're cheating, they usually say no. But so it's AI detecting AI and making what could be a pretty horrific mistake if you overreact. Turnitin, of course, said, this is just advisory. The teacher should still, investigate and not just immediately do something bad. The student was helping test a beta of Turnitin software, so they know it wasn't actually cheating. And they actually used real AI fabricated essays, mixed essays, and then real essays to test the detector. Turnitin says it's 98% accurate, but false positives or type 1 errors do occur. So I guess the point is you should be careful not to overreact when you're scanning your students' work. And I did learn this a long time ago using MOS to grade computer science assignments. Cheaters are going to cheat, I'm telling you. Often they seem to take more effort and time to cheat than it would take if they just did the work in the first place. But, do what I do. Call them in for a conversation about the project, and you'll know soon enough whether you're asking them to explain the code. And when they finally blurt out, "Okay, my uncle wrote it. Can you just take a few points off or something?" No kidding. I had somebody say that once. Well, when he first heard the call of vapor cuisine, he realized that the market for a $5,000 sniff of shrimp foam was already saturated. But couldn't just about anything be turned into foam and inhaled? And that's how we got inhalable beanie weenies, inhalable craft dinner, and inhalable Vienna sausage foam sips. He's the master of the unusual food. Please welcome Jason Wood.
That just sounds horrible.
I
think you just put me off lunch, dude.
Snorting beanie weenies is like a thing, right?
Oh, I hope not. Oh, well, the publication of cyber strategies and positions is continuing on this week. Early last month, the Biden administration published their cybersecurity strategy document. And today it was the UK's turn to publish for their national cyber force to publish a report on their mission and the type of operations that they've taken on. Now, I originally found this report through a blog post by Recorded Future, and then read through their write up about it. Then flipped over and checked the actual document out by the NCSF, as it's called, throughout their doc, because we got to abbreviate everything because National Cyber Force takes a while to type. Now, and let me tell you, if you have an aversion to hearing the word cyber, then you are going to overdose by reading this document. I know there are a number of folks that really don't like the use of the word, and I definitely resisted on it pretty hard for a while, but finally came to the conclusion that this is just where national governments have settled, what national governments have settled on using, and have just kind of taken the stance that I got to suck it up and deal with it. This document, they clearly have no fear of using it. They've got cyber operations. They've got cyber assets. They got cyber efforts. They've got cyber directives. They've got all kinds of stuff littered throughout the document. In fact, if they had toilets with Ethernet cables, I think there would be cyber flushes. Anyway, the NCF is UK's consolidation of agencies related to executing operations or actions online to protect the UK and to a lesser extent interests online. You've got a consolidation of resources or departments at GCHQ, MI6, or the Secret Intelligence or Special Intelligence Service. I forget which of those two it is, as well as military units. Basically pulling this all into a single command. And while maybe not exactly analogous, you could probably compare it to the United States pulling a lot of their resources together under like U.S. Cyber Command. And then that's operating out of NSA's headquarters in Fort Meade. Anyhow, the NCF is actually fairly new. They just established it in 2020, and it's still definitely a work in progress. They, in fact, they don't even have headquarters yet. They're apparently under construction in Samlesbury, the village of Samlesbury in Lancashire. And so, but the document itself really just sounds like hey, we are open for business and already operating, even if we don't have a home quite yet. Now, unfortunately, for the curious like me, the document does not give any specific examples of operations that they have carried out. They make some generic statements saying that, hey, we do things every day. We're carrying out different actions and against our adversaries, but these are covert, and as a result, we need to keep it secret. And so they let it go at that. And they don't even give any particular example of what they might do in any level of specificity. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but not terribly surprising. The document really kind of reads like a statement to the world that, hey, they are out there and they're able to start projecting power by the UK. They go into great effort really to point out, you have this offensive component that they're addressing in here, that they aren't going to sit back and wait for their adversaries to attack UK interests. Instead, they're going to get involved out there and been taking actions against them as well. But they make a lot of effort to say, hey, we're not going to be indiscriminate about this. We're not going to lob cyber bombs and cyber missiles all over the internet, or however you want to put it. In fact, they use the term accountable, precise, and calibrated throughout there. And they go into some effort to talk about the checks that they have set up and processes to scoping their engagements and operations, the amount of planning that goes into that, and then making sure that they are calibrated to an appropriate level for whatever action that they want to take, for the effect that they want to have. There appear to be a few reasons for that focus. One, they state that they don't want, or they want to assure the people in the UK that one, here's what we're about and what we're doing, and two, they're accountable to oversight, that they're not going to just be running around hacking all the things. But it also sounds like a little bit of a dig at Russia and China, as Recorded Futures blog post notes, because the UK has accused countries of being reckless in their attack campaigns, and specifically they call out Russia and China. And to be fair, NotPetya is not exactly a great example of a calibrated or precise or controlled or anything like that type of operation. And in fact, I was wondering, from reading this this entire thing, if the NCF would use self-propagating malware at all, because every time that happens, there always seems to be knock-on effects where it goes into areas that weren't intended, causes impacts that nobody expected. Stuxnet, things like that, or NotPetya, which really took the world by storm, literally. But But they talked about, again, they talked about the type of operations, their goals they're looking at. They cited the threats posed by state-sponsored groups, criminal groups, and hacktivists. They also noted that in the Russian war, we've got these unaffiliated type of threat actors who respond to things going on in the world and take actions supposedly to the benefit of their home country. But without any affiliation to that country. And they cited, in particular, the Russian war against Ukraine, where we've got unaffiliated groups on both sides attacking the opposing country. And they note that this could cause an undesired escalation of conflict between these countries, as one of these unaffiliated groups in Ukraine, for example, could take a destructive action that against Russia that Ukraine would be like, oh, I don't think we want to do that. Let's not go this far. But because this other group doesn't have that kind of oversight, they just go ahead and do it anyway, and then Russia gets pissed off, and they escalate things further and puts pressure on Ukraine to respond as well. And so, that definitely is a bit concerning. I don't know how that they would address that unless they pick up on one of these groups and turn around and start attacking them, trying to shut them down. But that's one of the threats that they cited out there. They did one of the things I also thought was interesting. They talked about some of the psychology of these types of operations. When you think of a government attacking another government, you've got espionage. Obviously, is something that comes to mind, but also trying to deny or deny a capability to that opposing government. And keep them from being able to carry something out. And they did say that there's an additional psychological effect of carrying out operations that even if we don't or we aren't able to deny access to resources or capabilities, that just by doing so and basically impairing it and interrupting it causes that adversary then to wonder what the heck is going on. How far is the reach into their organization or their infrastructure? And then, you could potentially have them not trusting their systems or their tools, and that causes their actions to slow down and perhaps even doubt some of the information they receive through these systems because has it been manipulated anyway? When they talk about the criminal groups, one of the things that came to mind, again, they don't give any examples, but one that came to my mind here in the U.S., that I could see this group taking a similar type of action is when Colonial Pipeline was ransomed. Colonial Pipeline gets locked up. They pay the ransom. I think it was like $5 million in cryptocurrency to the attackers. But shortly after that, the U.S. turned around and stole back those tokens, or at least a number of them, from the threat actors themselves, basically tipping their hand, saying that they had already been taking actions against this group and obviously had a pretty good level of infiltration of it and their capabilities because they had access to their wallet, which assumes like the seed key and stuff like that, that private seed key that's required to access a wallet. So they had that and were able to basically use that to transfer the tokens back into U.S. control. So again, they've been carrying out operations for a while, and now somebody made the decision, okay, this happened. We're going to go ahead and claw back that money and basically let everybody know what access we had. And I'm sure that group was just like panicked, wondering what else do they have access to in our environment. So definitely something that I could see, even though I can't think of any examples in the UK of them taking a similar type of action, it doesn't mean that they aren't there, that they haven't done similar kind of things. And again, and they make this kind of statement in here that the document also is kind of intended to have a deterrent effect on the UK's adversaries by basically saying the NCF is there, they are operational, again, even if they don't have a home yet, and are carrying out operations every day on some level. And they say, hopefully there's an effective deterrent here on that. Will it have a measurable effect? Probably not. I mean, the UK, the US, and other governments, and Russia, China, etc. Everybody has has had these capabilities for a while, and that's been known about it, known for quite a while. So while they're stating, hey, we're the new kid on the block, and we have this capability, we've consolidated all these capabilities from these various teams, it's not that the capabilities didn't exist already in that government. So it's kind of, saying that we're here, here's what's going on, here's what we're about, introduction, and probably not going to have much of a deterrent effect because folks already assumed the UK was capable of this sort of thing. But still, maybe somebody will look at it and go, well, maybe the UK is taking this a little bit more seriously. Maybe we need to be a bit more cautious about what we're doing because they could turn around on us. If you think that this something like this sounds interesting to you and you want to check it out, and you want to read about lots and lots and lots of cybers, I've got the links in the show notes, both to the original document as well as the recorded future blog post. And go take a look at it there.
All right. Thanks, Jason. And finally, on April 3rd in 1973, Martin Cooper made the first cell phone call from the streets of Manhattan. The phone was produced at Motorola, and AT&T and Bell Labs were all working on a mechanism that would allow users to make calls from cars using cellular tech. Cooper basically got frustrated, I guess, and developed his own prototype in 90 days for a public demonstration for the press. Now, the fun part is, for the demo call, he reputedly decided to troll Dr. Engel, who was the current director of AT&T's cell program. He says the call said, "Hi, Joel, it's Marty Cooper. I'm calling you from a cell phone, a personal handheld portable cell phone." Now, Engel says he did not remember the call, but maybe it did happen. The very first cell phone, the Dynatec 8000X, which was the size of a cinder block and weighed about that much, was the very first commercial cell phone, but it would not actually go on sale until 1983. And that's the news. Thanks, Jason, and I will see you on Friday.